Hello, my name is Wyatt Gurton, and the book I read was Allegedly by Raven Rollins. The hook I chose was the quiet rural landscape of Pontotoc County bellies a darker history, etched with tales of violence, tragedy, and the relentless pursuit of justice. The characters I had. The book had a lot of characters, and as you would expect in a true crime book, they were victims, investigators, family members, witnesses, and friends. These characters were constantly shifting in age, ethnicity, and situation. Like some were old, some were young, they were white, Mexican, black. There was no one ethnic group it focused on. The one thing the book kept in common was the community coming together to solve the crimes. Because in this book, it's not just one flowing story, it's several different ones. Now, the plot. It was in one town, which was Ada, and it was about tragedies that have occurred in its borders. And these ranged from murders to abuse to rape, assault. It went all between them. But the actual location in Ada would switch. It was in schools, it was homes, factories. There was an abandoned glass facility in the book. It was just everywhere in Ada, but it stayed in there. Now, the another similarity in every one of these stories was that everyone affected had unhealable wounds. It talked about a bunch of difficult situations people have been put in that no one can heal from, physically or mentally. It was primarily used to raise awareness and bring attention to past tragedies in hopes to solve them and even prevent more. One of them I remember in particular specifically talked about how the parents of the victim just gave this author quotes and created an entire program and changed the way our law system works because of their case. Because they were followed, the whole family was chased down and hurt by one man who couldn't be kept in jail. And that changed the whole system. The structure of the book, well, each chapter was its own case. So it wasn't one story brought out along the whole book. It was one story, and it went in chronological order. It started in early years and it progressed to the 2000s. So that was the main structure. Now, it didn't really have any main focus on what kind of crimes. I saw lots of murder, a few missing persons, a bit of thievery, and like three ones of rape. And it's structured about 10 pages per case, but some of them were a little longer, others were a couple pages shorter. And at the end of each case, there was a statement by the author either asking for help to solve the case or telling you that if you have experienced something similar to the case or you know someone experiencing something similar to the case, call the proper people. And many cases are structured as a mini story. So we know who did the crime, we know who was affected, but we're following the investigators as they find the evidence. And even in the trials. Now, was anything solved in this? Well, like I said, the book is filled with cases that weren't solved, and many were. A lot of them ended with someone being punished, but some of them didn't, and that's when the author would ask you to, if you knew information, send it. But more than just being solved, the book advocated for awareness of the situations and just to help people who have been there. And though a lot of the stories were not solved, they could be afterwards, especially the cases that were early on in the book, like 1909. Those have had a lot of time to be solved. They could have been done, they could not have. My summary. Well, the book starts off with an investigation of a murder in 1909. And as it progresses, it talks about new cases in chronological order, older to newer. Like I said previously, these cases vary in crime, from murder to rape to assault to multiple crimes done in the same time. Most of them end with someone being put into prison or jail, or just somehow being punished. Some even ended with the person killing themselves. But a lot of them end with mysteries still unsolved. Which is why, like I said, the author ends each crime case with something relative to it, either asking for help or raising awareness. Now, there were a lot of people out there with similar situations to what happened in this book. And the author's point is to help them solve it or get out of the situation they're in. My personal connection. This reminds me of really any kind of series, especially just crime series, where each episode is a new crime that they have to solve, because each chapter was a new case that was solved or wasn't. And it's pretty much a series condensed down into one book. I don't really relate to any characters. I've never experienced a real tragedy in my life, especially not in the same sense as these victims and families. So I don't relate to them. I've never done anything atrocious, so definitely no victimizers relate to me. The only similar situation I really relate to was when my mother was threatened by a man, so we had to keep tabs on his whereabouts while he was in prison, which I don't really know much about that story. I'm pretty sure he's out now, but we haven't had any issues. So that's the closest I can really get to relating to this. My academic response. The book was relatively difficult to read and follow. I'd probably scale it a 7 out of 10 since it's a lot of different cases to follow and has a lot of characters. It's kind of easy to lose track of which case is which and if the one before ended and just what characters were in this one. And I think Raven Rollins' writing technique was pretty interesting. This is the first book I've seen with like a story inside of a story inside of a story, rather than just one long mystery. It had several different themes, similar but not quite the same. And I've never seen this technique before, and I found it really interesting. My recommendations. I think the book is fitting for the people who don't really like one drawn out story. They like to kind of read a lot of similar things and but that things that aren't quite the same. And I liked it. It kept me rooting for justice and made sure it was, even though it was not always achieved, it still had me hoping that maybe someone could help even after the book was done. I would rate it a 7 out of 10, mostly because I enjoyed it. But a lot of different things happened at once, and it was hard to keep a track of. I think if you are the right person to read it, you would really enjoy it.